Boom! It's Wednesday night.
We're back.
Yeah,
2 week
welcome
vacation.
back from the vacation.
Right?
Yeah. So, did you do anything interesting over the break?
No, I did as little as possible. It was awesome.
Well, that's exactly what like you're supposed to get. Like I don't know, rejuvenated. The only way to do that is not do anything.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm still having issues with my job, but other than that, I'm feeling much better.
Oh well, you shouldn't be running the glory hole then. All right, but it's Wednesday night. Welcome everybody back from our, I guess it'd be holiday or break that we I guess we instituted this year. So normally we would do every Wednesday, and so we decided to take a break this year and give us some downtime with our families and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
but without further ado, I guess we should go ahead and greet everybody that's in here.
Sounds good.
First and foremost was Mr. Wilburn. Showed up first and foremost, believe it or not. Lars was second. Danny Boyd, One-Eyed Cat, Michael Robert Embry, Mrs. One-Eyed Cat, Bruce Coltgen, Tom Brown, Keith Calitri. Oh my gosh, what is going on with me today? Calitri, and Buff Del Campo. Nick the Van Man is in here, which Nick during the holiday season decided to get his 351 Windsor powered van together, and it's pretty stout from what I hear.
Nice.
Yeah. Let's see. Buick 350 V8 power from Mr. KS Skyhawk is here, ready to tune in.
Nice.
Paul Pahoy is here. Let's see. Fab Race Mod Repeat all the way from Northeast Dragway. Mama M3. So Miss Colleen Tebow is in the house. Danny Boyd, if I hadn't said Danny Boyd already. NSB Customs. And Levi's Backyard Performance is here.
What's up,
what
gang?
Up, gang? Yeah. And then James from SSR Performance here from the previously known as the James and James Show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Welcome everybody for and then in pops Mr. Two Hacks himself. Two Hacks Jeff popped in here for this live. But yeah, there was a lot of things that happened for over the Christmas or I guess I should say the holiday break, because it includes Christmas and New Year's, and pretty much from the end of Thanksgiving we pretty much give up, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that what it was? Okay.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
On cruise control,
What's that?
On cruise control. Just
it was mellow and easy going, and we were on I-40 in the middle of Arizona running 100 miles an hour with the cruise set.
Right.
So yeah. Let's see. I dropped a video from Mr. Rodder's Neighborhood, the Easy 302 that I was telling everybody was coming up. So, and then there was a lot of people that promoted around. So if you promoted it around, thank you very much. That video ended up getting like 30,000 views, man, which is the most I've ever had on any video.
That's all awesome.
Yeah. I then did an update on it where I, because you get all the, what do they say, the troll farm. You don't feed the troll farm, right? Like you let them starve. And I had the troll farm trolling me big time, like normal. Oh, you got the wrong stroke crank. You got the wrong crank. That's not going to work. The block won't work. And it was like a list of 20 different things. And, I started second guessing myself. So I did a second video and I'm like, oh, you know what? Somebody mentioned that I might have a 3.1 inch stroke crank. And I thought I had done all the homework and it was a 3-inch stroke crank. And then I Googled it and it came up with a 3.1 inch stroke crank. And then everything got all be confusing. And Andrew Nelson called me and he was like, hey, don't listen to all these freaking trolls. What you're doing was right. And it's solid and sound. It's a 3-inch stroke crank from the get-go. You can use the 5.7 rod with the DZ302 piston and it's going to work out. But he said, we've done this in a land speed record car that was like 290 something cubic inch. And the pistons actually hit the chambers. And so that's what my next video is going to be about, is where I'm going to have to clearance the piston to fit the chamber. But that's it. So it shouldn't be too complicated. But yeah, so that one was going pretty good. I seen that you have done an updated video.
Yeah.
Let's see. What was it on? The Edelnator. No,
suspension. Suspension, I dropped that. And then also to the Edelnator. Edelnator got updated
2.
boosters.
Yeah, 2.0. Yeah.
2.0 updated boosters, and then the next video I'm going to show is like the metering block and how you can upgrade it from regular gasoline to E85, and you can do this all on your own. You don't need, it's nothing special.
Sweet. Well, what about methanol to E85?
It's pretty close to that. Methanol, you probably bring about what, 40% more fuel, 50% more fuel.
And it's
85
probably
is,
got bigger passages in it.
yeah, I got 180 thousandths in this thing right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's see how it's going here. Do we have any tech questions yet? Get in. Miss Katji says, "Get in early. Hello. Have a great New Year." All. Hey. Tom Brown says, "You know what I wish they would find on Oak Island: a freshly built 300 ST switch pitch." So
6 minutes.
yeah, 6 minutes in it. Okay. But no, Tom Brown, if you need some Super Turbine 300s, I'll bring you 2 of them. Well, wait, you're all the way up in North Dakota and it's a dead of winter. No, I'll wait till later. Let's see. All right. So any questions? I haven't seen any yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to get back in the swing of this. I'm out of it. Man.
Well, someone actually asked me a question the other day about, why do we do this? He was literally, that was the question. He sent it to me. Why do you do this? And I actually sat back and thought about it for about an hour. And really why I do it is actually it's on that video of our intro video. There's a picture of me in my green car driving across the desert on Highway 10, just coming into Palm Springs when I was going out to the
oh yeah, by all the windmills.
Yeah, by the zip going off to the zip tie drags, right? When they do the whole cruise. That's why I do it, is that kind of stuff. There's nothing like freighting down the freeway in your 69 car. Is it going to make it? Who knows? And it's like, it could be cold, but you got the window down, you got the heater on full blast, and you're just cruising. And it's kind of like, I've been watching this series of Yellowstone, right? And how these guys, really want to get on the cowboys, right? They want to get on the horse and just go for the ride. I think it's the same thing for me personally. It's that just get in the car and just go. That's why I have no problem driving it from here to Dallas with my kids in the car. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
For me, that's what it is. That's why I do it.
Yeah. Well, why I do it, I don't know. I think a lot of this information, in life, when you're doing something that's not like the norm, when you're doing something that's like you don't know the information, you're having to learn it. You pay for an education, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of sucks is sometimes you pay a lot for the education. You build your first small block Chevy. It's got 8.5-to-1 compression. You put this hog ass cam in it and freaking tunnel ram and headers, and then you use the stock converter with 273 gears.
And it can't get up the driveway.
You can't figure out why this thing's such a pig.
Yeah.
And I mean, I did everything right. And you did, but you're paying for an education. And it was a very expensive one at that point. And I like to keep people from having to pay for that education. Or, there is businesses out here that in our community that thrive off people's ignorance. Mm-hmm. And I like to make sure that they're aware as possible of what they can and can't do with, fairly cheap, low buck stuff. That's what I like doing. I like breaking the code with a Rochester Quadrajet. I like throwing the switch pitch out there because now we're however many minutes in. But dude, when you can flick a switch and freaking have a 2,500 stall converter at your beckoning call, and then go right back to 1,500, that's the best of both worlds. Really, it is.
Pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I like that kind of stuff. And I think that's what real hot rodding is all about. It's not, that's what I hate about the LS. Okay. When the LS first came out, it was actually kind of fit in this category well, where you had to make your own parts and do something cool with the factory existing stuff. But now you can literally go down and make a list and build an entire engine that was never built in a GM facility.
Yeah.
Not one single part was ever made by General Motors. And that's where it makes it so easy. And that used to be the small block Chevrolet. I hated the Chevrolet small block because you could build one for cheap and they would just run circles around half the stuff out there.
Yeah.
And I always hated it. We used to say, my mom could build a small block Chevrolet that runs nines, right? Um, and it's not hard because they literally you got every part in the world. But when you got to make your stuff, how like how committed is that? You know, you got to make stuff. That's where you show real commitment to being a hot rodder, being a home built engineer, a true backyard, shade tree mechanic.
Yeah, I guess when I first started this, it was because of necessity. This was like how I had to get to work and get to school, and I had to drive a car that was kind of a piece of shit, so that way I could get there and back and figure it out. But now I do it because it's fun. Like it's almost like a way of life, I guess.
Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, it becomes I don't know, maybe like a purpose for you to see what you can get away with for what you have, and not spend a ton of money. And just, I really like the one thing that's always been my big thing is like, I like running around the guys that have $30,000 in their junk and you
Yep.
got 3,000 and you just whip them,
Yeah.
and that's what I think is the greatest. And it's just because you sat down and you put the forethought into it and you figured out how this worked and that worked and what you could use here and there and put something together that's just really awesome. And it's just a well thought out combination. If you really look at it, I mean, it was apparent at No Name Nationals when the 28-10-5 cars got called up. There were some serious heavy hitters up there, but like some of those serious heavy hitters should have been running way faster than what they were.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, how is this guy with like obviously 3,500 horsepower,
Right.
not running like 370s?
Right. Right.
If that was my junk, it would be running 370s or it wouldn't be out here.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I'd have been in the fours easily.
yeah, no problem whatsoever,
Mhm.
but not like 550s. No, not even close. I mean, I had a
Yeah.
freaking tube chassis car with 3,500 horsepower. My junk was like, I was ready to lean on everybody with 800 horse, and whatever that thing's making. But I'm thinking with that mile an hour and eighth mile, it's probably somewhere around 750 to 800 horsepower is what I'm thinking. Well, I
Yeah.
guess.
Actually, one more thing that I got going on this is that if you're going to be doing a triangulated four link, the QA1s, I'm actually making an upper bracket that's got an adjustable link. So it's when you buy these, you only have two holes, one here and one here. So I'm going to adjust the front one so that way it's going to be a weld and it's going to be double walled. So that way you can put it in there and you'll have one up and three extra down. So it's going to be pretty cool. Actually, I'm sorry. It's going to have one up and two down. So they'll have four holes. And yeah, I'm looking to see how that's going to work on this thing. And this thing's ready to go, man. I'm waiting for the first race. It's like, I think it's like February 28th, I think is that, or is it March 1st at Holly Springs or Jackson? I'm not sure. I got two places. I can either go to, if I go to Jackson, that's a radial prep race. That's on the 28th and the 1st. So the tracks will be prepped well. So that way I like well prepped tracks when I'm trying to figure out the suspension. So that way I can actually see the suspension move and see what it's doing. But Holly Springs is going to be on the 1st. So, but that's a lot closer of a track. That's only 30 minutes instead of 2 hours. So yeah, but yeah, I've got less than a month and a half, or what is a month? Yeah. Are we racing?
So Buick 350 V8 Power saying that if you remember before the holidays, he
Mhm.
bought a used lift, 2-post lift, right?
Yep.
And so he's busy cutting down the lift and making it work and making it a little bit shorter. So that way he can have his car up in the lift and then be under it on a stool working on the car.
Yeah.
So that's the plan.
He's got the 10-foot ceilings. I got the same thing. Exactly. Yep. I remember that.
Our performance is saying, do we have any prospects? Oh my gosh. Do we have any prospects for the Triple Crown class so far, or is everyone tight-lipped? And thanks for doing the show, guys. I look forward to it every week.
I actually have one person, but I can't reveal it yet. But he did tell me he is 100% in it. He's actually already started to work on getting a setup, and I'm helping him get it set up right now. But until he announces it, I can't say anything.
Don't say who it is, but
Nope.
what are we looking at for the combo?
Small block Chevrolet.
Oh, it is a small block Chevy.
Small block Chevy.
Okay. All right. And a what?
Can't tell you that because you'll know.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, I
Fair
can't tell
enough.
you that.
GM platform.
It's a
Okay.
GM platform. Yes,
Yeah.
but it's going to be tunnel ram. It's going to be cool, man.
Well, dude, I was kicking around the idea. I could see my Easy 302 kind of fits in that category, like really easy. Right?
Yes.
And I just found today on Marketplace something really, really freaking cool. How about like 76 Vega that was already V8 swapped in the 70s and it's for sale for $2,500 and it's got a
Dude,
4-speed, right? Could I
that's
put the
perfect.
302 in that and just be hanging it all out? Watch that 7.5-inch rear end just spit the freaking pinion right out the back. But yeah, it would be a cool thing to buy though. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll talk with Nick the Van Man and we'll come up with a plan.
Yeah.
All right. So
Oh, one more thing. I forgot to tell you this too. Someone chimed in. So we'll have your scales, my scales, and we have another set of scales that's going to come to the track. So we'll have 3 sets of scales. So that way we can always get it done no matter what.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see here. Old McDonald has a car. Will they find Jimmy Hoffa on the Curse of Hoke Island? I doubt it.
No.
I heard the rumor is he's like 50-yard line at the New York Jets or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the stadium. Okay. 38 Racing is saying here's a Triple Crown question. Will Holly Spreadboard Carb qualify for the 100-pound weight break? No, it will not. The idea here was to try to get people to use a factory spread bore. The intended idea was, see, those are both of them, the Carter and the Quadrajet are what they call it's essentially an AVS carburetor, right? The Holly spread bore is not. It is a true vacuum secondary with a power valve on it, right?
Yeah.
But the idea was for somebody to use the AVS style carburetor because one, in a racing application, especially with like a 4-speed, that thing is really hard and finicky to get to work right. And the intended purpose was if it's going to be so freaking hard for them to get to do it, they should get some kind of deal out of it, some kind of weight break out of it.
Yeah.
Or some kind of break out of it. And the way we did that was with weight. We pulled
Yeah.
weight off of them so that they have some, I guess, adjustability in the carburetor to still be competitive.
I think what he's asking is that will the spread bore be for the 100-pound, not the 200-pound? Because remember we did the 4150 style.
Oh,
So the 41. I think that's what he's asking. So
that's right.
yeah, then it will. Yeah, it'll be fine.
The rules here. Yeah, you're right. I maybe have screwed that up. Okay.
Yeah. A Holly spread bore will be fine. It's basically a 4150.
A single 4150 carb is 100 pounds, and then a single spread bore. It doesn't say Quadrajet and Thermoquad. It says single spread bore 200 pounds. So I'm assuming the single spread bore, being a Holly spread bore, probably would qualify for the 200-pound weight break. I mean, I can't go back on the rules; they're already out.
Yeah, fine,
right?
whatever.
Yeah, but I mean, if it's going to end up being the dominating, the dominating option for carburetors, I'm telling you, it's probably going to lose some of its flash and flare for the next year or two.
But just remember, if you're under that 3,000 pound mark, you got the small tire. So just know that.
Yeah. Let's see here. And we can actually go over the rules here in a little bit because I got them pulled up. Tom Brown says, when porting and matching intake runners and heads, should it be a constant funnel down to the valve, or should it be bigger at each end and narrower in the middle like a Venturi?
You want the Venturi. You want to throat it down. That's you want the speed up effect. That's where it gets.
You want the Venturi, the area, the closest, the smallest and highest velocity area should technically be like right at the throat of the valve, right? Mm-hmm. Like right where it passes through the valve should be your highest point of velocity. You shouldn't have the Venturi, it shouldn't be narrow way up at the top of the port.
Yeah.
But I'm not savvy on porting stuff. I just know you want your highest point of velocity, like literally right behind the valve. And so the other thing is that I know if you're going to taper it down and narrow it, you need to look at it as like taking a curve, and it needs to be, you need to do only the work that you need at the top, right? And then you want to cut that corner at the bottom. I don't know what you would call it, I guess, because I don't know jack crap about porting stuff, but I mean, it just makes the most sense.
Yeah,
You
I'm
have a
doing
curve.
an intake, so
Huh?
I know how the intake, the tunnel ram on the Hemi. We basically you're getting well, I believe it was 20%. I think is what it is, 20% difference between the top and the bottom, and you want to ever slowly taper in, and then you want to get your runner length. I think it was 14 inches. Remember, I'm going off of like 9 months of memory here, but yeah, to the back of the valve. So there, I was trying to get it. Before I say anything else, I want to look back at my build on this, but it's for wave tuning because I'm going to build the exhaust exactly for that too. So, yeah.
Well, I was just looking at on the short side radius.
Oh, the short
Right?
side runner. Yeah, radius.
Yeah,
Yep.
you want to have that radius be like a hairpin
Tall
curve,
yeah, it's
right?
tall as
You
part.
want the air to come from the top and then
Mhm.
angle down at much lesser of an angle.
That's
So
right.
the least amount of work that you do to affect the airflow at the short side
Mhm.
radius, probably the better. Most of it you're going to find is mostly at the top to direct the air down into the short side. It would just be like which apex would you take in a road race, right? It's that same principle. So you have to look at it like that. There's a guy I follow here on Facebook called Spire Racing Engines, I think.
Yeah, I watch him too. Yeah.
Do you?
Mhm.
And he does like some awesome port work. And he did a Chevrolet small block and then filled half the port with epoxy and then made the port round.
Yes, I
And
saw that.
everyone was like, that'll never work. Well, that sucker ended up making like 900 horse with a stock head.
I saw that. All the haters, I'm like, oh, it's going to be perfect, man, because he's raising the runner, he's making it
Exactly.
So,
Yeah,
so
he's making
everything.
the turn easier
Yeah,
because the runner's so much higher,
that's
right?
right. There's no
It's the
stalling
shot.
in the air. It's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Tom Brown says, all right, well, that was the one we just did. Okay. Bear Rose Garage says, Dallas, you just totally describe why I love Rat Rods. Embraces the ability and mindset of built, not bought.
Yep.
And that's what true hot rodding is all about. That's what, I really like about hot rodding. Let's see. Levi's Backyard Performance says, I had a guy want to race me for 10K. He is on the Street Outlaws just for reference. I said, I don't even have 10K in my whole car. Told him to shove it. Dude, I wouldn't have done that. I would have taken the guy's 10K. I don't know about that. You got a pretty big community, man. I think we could have probably made something happen there and you'd be 10K happier.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Let's see. Schweers and Gears says, what's up, guys? Hope all is going well. A couple of weeks back, you guys talked about steam. I'm a steam plant operator, and that's totally my wheelhouse. Look up combined cycle power plant. You'll dig it. Oh, man, a Kodag. Well, no, not a Kodag. I guess it'd be steam or gas. So
I'm a steam. I love like steam trains. I'm an engineer to this day because of a steam injector. I talked about that before, but steam trains are basically why I am an engineer right now, 100%.
Oh, I see what he's saying. Okay, so Levi's saying he has a 3,500 horsepower Pro Mod, and that's why he wants to race you for 10K. Oh yeah, you probably are better off not taking that race.
Yeah.
Let's see. Buff Del Campo says, do we need a fourth set of scales? I think we may have the scaling covered.
I think so.
I'm not 100% certain, but it sounds like it's going to go pretty quick. Let's see. Bear Rose Garage says that I would love to join the Triple Crown class with our 65 Corvair, straight axle and tunnel ram, small block Chevy up front, but I have way too many irons in the fire for that this year. That's fine, buddy. Just get your project together and get down to the No Name Nationals, and then check out the Triple Crown class. We're gonna see how it goes this year.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see. One on Cat. Let's see. Don says, Xmas vacation. I did get to pick up my new converter, another piece of the puzzle 2800 stall. So, in that little Valiant, that sucker's going to be fast sooner or later.
It's going to be awesome.
Nick the Van Man says the rules are fine. I'm sure no one is going to show up with and hose everyone with an Autolite 4300 spread bore.
I was thinking the same thing.
Let's see. Okay. Keith Clerici says the 26 by 8.5 tire is not a bad thing if you have the suspension. I went 1016 in Coyote stock with a G-Force trans leaving at 7,400. At that time, the car was faster with the small tire, less mass. Yes,
Yes.
that smaller tire will always gain you on the track. That's why I always thought like the back half stuff where everybody's going with the like big, huge 32-inch wide slicks and stuff like, man, what a waste having all that mass rotating, right? You buy these super light wheels, super expensive light wheels, and slicks are not cheap in that size. And next thing you know, man, you are leaving a lot of ET on the table if you don't need that much tire to hook the car up.
But here's the thing, though, is that remember, Sykeston, when we're racing that time, you're having cars go down the track with hard tires. So it's not a slick tire. So it's prepped in the morning, and then after that, it's not prepped
Yeah,
the
it
rest of
starts
the
to
day.
wane. Yeah, it
It
starts to.
definitely goes away. So that's the reason why I did the tire rule with that, is for that reason, because it's prepped in the morning and that's it.
Clayton's Toolbox says, I bought a custom cam from Bullet. They put the wrong serial number on it. It doesn't match the cam card. I talked to them. I have to ship it to them at my expense to check over. Would you trust it?
I would just agree it. I know the guys from Bullet. They actually live like 2 streets over from here. The owners of it, and I know the son. And if they said it's right, I would believe it, but I would still check it. I would just degree it in and just do a center line to center line just to make sure it matches. And then I did a video a while back on, I think it's in my engine building thing, on if you didn't have a cam card, how to figure out what your cam is without a cam card.
Well,
And
you
so
and I did this,
yeah,
3 years ago when I had
yep,
the cam. Okay, so I was trying to get a stage 1 cam for Buick 455, a factory style stage 1 cam. Nobody had cams in stock at all at the time. This was like 3 years ago during the pandemic. And so it was like a year lead time to get a camshaft. And I'm like, dang, I got 4 or 5 of them here, but I don't know which one could be, I didn't know jack crap about big block Buick 455 camshafts at the time because the stage 1 actually has a groove cut in it. But I had like, I don't know, 4 or 5 cams. I ended up throwing them in a motor and I just degreed every single one of them and just figure out what the profile is. And then I found my stage 1 cam and crammed it in the motor.
yeah.
But you could literally do it at home, and all you really need is a dial indicator,
Yep.
and you can do it with or without a magnetic base. It's
Mhm.
not too difficult.
Yeah, I showed how to do it too with a lifter. If you just rotate the engine so the lifter's sitting up, so that way you could just put a bolt in there that sticks straight up and then put your dial indicator right on it, you're good to go.
Danny Boyd says, well, rat rods are okay as long as they're naturally occurring. I don't like seeing people rat up cars on purpose.
I agree.
I
I
There's
agree.
nothing that gets under my skin faster than somebody taking a muscle car and wiping it down with like mineral spirits to like essentially go through the paint and get down to the primer, and it has the smears and it looks like fake rat rod.
Mhm.
It's like when you go to the movies and they use CGI all over the place and it's obvious. I hate it.
I
I hate
agree.
it. It makes me just like want to walk out of the movie. And it's the same way with the, ratted up cars that shouldn't be in that category.
We have a couple of those guys that go to our Cars and Coffee in Edelbrock, and
Uh-huh.
it's like you go over to it and it looks just like destroyed. You get right up to it and it's totally smooth. No, the clear coat on it is absolutely perfect. No orange peel, and you're like, come on,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's off the deep end. That's jumping the shark, in my opinion. My uncle told me once that when porting the corners before the valve, to think of how a river cuts its path,
Yep,
it is never on the short side of the turn, always on
exactly.
the outside of the corner. And
Yep.
there you go. That's
Everything's
a good
got weight.
philosophy. Yeah. Tall garage. Was looking at rat rod type stuff today. My buddy said putting my Gen 1 Hemi in the dart wouldn't jive, and I need to find something more appropriate.
No, put it in your, if it's an early dart, like say a 64, 65, 66. That's no big deal. You just put a straight axle on it.
I think, any of those early Hemis and
Mhm.
Chryslers are acceptable in pretty much any Chrysler. I mean,
Yeah.
they're kind of The Hemis are odd, especially the early ones. I
Mhm.
like them because the way the valve covers look, they actually look more Hemi, in my opinion, than all the other ones.
They're
And it's
more
got
Hemi than
a
Hemi.
huge valve cover, but they're real short. Like
Yeah.
the bore spacing on them is like
It's a
probably
small
like
block.
4 inch or 4 1/4.
It's a small block. It's the same size length.
Oh,
You know,
really?
yeah, it's pretty damn close. So yeah.
It makes them look, the valve covers look really short and tall. So they look, in my opinion, they look more Hemi than Hemis do, than like a Gen 2 Hemi does.
Yeah.
Because it's got such a large bore spacing, it's spread out and then tall.
Yeah. And also too, technically the 426, because of how the valves go, it's not true dead on. That's why the Gen 1 looks more Hemis, because it's literally
They're exactly opposite of each
yes. Yeah.
other. Yeah. Okay. Blue Grit Garage says, I will be one of those guys unprepping the track for you all.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine. Come on, man.
Perfect.
We're having this event just for everyone. I mean, it's not for,
Yeah.
just race cars or anything. The cool thing about when you unprep the track,
Makes it more
everybody has to
fun.
race on that unprepped track surface.
Exactly.
So
And
it makes
that's what I
pretty
loved
much,
about it.
yeah, it's even across the board.
And that's why once I saw how the track was, that's why I was like, oh, those big guys with those big horsepower cars, they can't use it all.
Yeah. Well, if you watched, Jaron Long had a really hard time getting the car to hook up the first, I don't know, 3-4 passes.
Yeah.
And then they went too far and it went like on the bumper.
Right.
Yeah. Let's see here. 38 Racing says, since we're talking cams, where would you time a stock cam for higher RPM operation? Oh, that's a loaded question, man.
I would degree the cam fine first. Just find out
Yeah.
what the load separation angle is, and then if it's higher operation, then I would retard it. So if it's on a 112, usually they're put in at like say like a 108 or even a 106 ICL. I would retard that thing back to probably a 112 ICL, so that way it's a lobe separation of 112. Put the intake center line at 112, and that way you just make everything as late as possible and let it run out the back door.
Yeah, and it'll be everything you want it to be from about 2,000 RPM up.
To
Probably at 2,500 and up. But
yeah, I'm gonna say 2,500 to about 6,500, because it just won't have enough camshaft to make it breathe on the top end, because the cam's just going to get too small. They get smaller at the higher RPMs. They start bouncing and shit.
yeah, well, there's still that old school trick. The one that I like that nobody thinks of anymore is the original variable valve timing, which is known as the Rhodes lifter. You can still use a Rhodes lifter, and it works quite well, to be honest with you. So you can take a big gnarly cam and dumb it down some, so it has good vacuum and idle characteristics, and then it gives you all the top end power too.
Mm-hmm. The only thing with the Rhodes lifters, though, is you need a dyno to run them, because you're gonna have to test them a few times to find out where they want to be.
And
And
you need your oil pressure to come in at a certain time too. The
yes,
ideal time would be, you got to dial it into the power band.
exactly.
So Nick the Van Man says, I don't build rat rods. My vehicles are genuine pieces of shit. So
Nice.
you got that going for you. That was before the rat rod generation. You were in just the regular low buck rod, I guess.
Instead of having one really nice car, I have 7 pieces of shit, and I love it.
Exactly. Levi's Backyard Performance. Oh, I got a question. How are you going to spin the Easy 302, and how far you think it would spin? I put ARP rod bolts on 5.7 non-powdered metal rods, so I'm thinking it'll. And they're the later rod, or the later connecting rods, so they're stronger than early stuff. But the DZ 302 used to spin up to about 7,500, 8,000 RPM pretty easy without much effort. And that's because the piston speed is so low on it when you make such a short stroke crank, right? This one I would assume probably would be just about as happy, but I think what's going to happen is it's going to run out of camshaft. Cam's going to lay on its face around 6,500. And that's because it's a hydraulic roller, and the lifter weighs so damn much that I'm going to run out of spring pretty early. And I don't think I have enough duration and profile to make it wind up, 7,500, $8,000. Andy Wood says that Casper is 100% authentic rust.
Yep. So's the Lizard King. It's perfect.
Yeah, there you go. And Danny Boyd said it'll probably spin past $6,000. I'm thinking it'll probably be around 6,500. And what we're going to find is that EZ302 is going to make more power than a DZ at lower RPM.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're going to find. Let's see. Fab Race Mod Repeat says there was a glass 32 coupe running around here in the Mid-Atlantic. It was all rat rotted. So, well, you had to take a second look.
Oh.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. Looking for it. Okay. Tom Brown says, Shane, did you bring your Predator carbs to show us?
We're going to do that next week because this week we're going to just get reacquainted, and then we're going to be talking about rules at about 8 o'clock. But yes, I will do that. That's going to be next week. I do have them sitting right here, but that's a whole show.
Beer Rose Garage says, Rat Rod rule number 4: thou shalt not kill a good car, but I will sell it to buy more. Get it out of my driveway stuff.
Yeah.
You know, that's I guess a page out of the playbook of demolition derby cars.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, demo derby was big in Central Illinois, to the point where guys were buying, like, you know, in the early 90s, you could score like a 70s Caprice, you know, or let's say a Buick wagon for pretty reasonable money. I mean, $500-600, but they were buying really nice ones, really nice cars to turn into a demo derby car. And it's like, dang, dude, you should have just left that one for the guy that wanted to drive something that was classic, you know? Because I mean, spend $2,000 on a car back then. That was you bought something really nice. Okay. Danny Boyd says DZ had that forged crank though. Yes, it did. But if you watch my video, I explain in there what I'm using is a later model small block Chevrolet with a large journal, but yet it has the short stroke, the 3-inch stroke, but it also has the large journal rod journal. So now there's more overlap on the crank,
mm-hmm.
and it's using a cast crank as well. It's actually more flexible than a forged crank. I don't know. I think it'll probably spin up there just fine. I just think of it like a 302 Ford. 302 Ford, I had no problems taking up to 7,500, $8,000 with a cast crank.
Yeah, I agree.
As long as it was balanced. Yeah, that's the big one. Nick the Van Man saying his 351 Windsor project was a success. I actually ignored horsepower, focused on torque, and couldn't be happier. I did a second gear burnout from a roll today with the 87 octane gas in the tank. Awesome. Dude, it sounds like something that might be fun at the No Name Nationals for the burnout contest. Because when have you seen a van slinging it around?
That would be awesome.
Let's see. Clayton's Toolbox. Have you had a Buick 350 on a scale? Are they actually 450 pounds? What about a Buick 455? Okay, so here's what I do know. Yes, the Buick 350 is actually 450 pounds.
Wow.
The Buick 300 came with aluminum heads in 64 and an aluminum intake manifold in 64. And you could get it back. You could get it almost 100 pounds less than the Buick 350. So, yes, the weight savings is amazing. And that's where you cash in on it, where people don't look at it. They look at it like old technology or kind of crappy stuff. Well, when you have an engine that weighs 300 pounds and you can take that directly off the nose of a car, and a small block Chevrolet is it's almost 600 pounds, or like 580 pounds. When you take that much weight off the nose, and then, you know, the weight, let's say it's 200 pounds difference, that's 2/10. You know, it better make a lot more horsepower than that lightweight engine. So that's how I looked at it. Now the Buick 455, it weighs 25 pounds more than a Chevrolet small block, which means it is the lightest big block you can get. Wow. Let's see. Oh, okay. Danny Boyd saying and more torque than a DZ. It probably will have a lot more usable torque than the DZ all around the RPM range. It should be, I think it would be a much more streetable engine. And really where it would have shined the most is if Chevrolet would have built one and put the aluminum LT heads on it and had the LT intake manifold on it. Yeah. It would have really been shining then.
Put that in the Camaro would have been
awesome. Yeah, something lightweight with it. Because, well, the way I think about it is they screwed up because they stuck with that 350. And if you remember, those years was the first year they came out with the T56 6-speed. It would have been a freaking monster, man. It would have been so much fun to drive. They probably couldn't have built enough of them. Levi's saying, well, if I was doing the Triple Crown, I'd be building a DZ302. That's a big cube motor. I don't know if that's sarcasm. I can't quite tell what he's saying there. Yeah, the class was not designed around 302. It was designed around 333 cubic inch. So if you do the DZ302, you're going to take a tire penalty on it. You got to run that small 8.5 inch tire. Okay. Blue Grit Garage says that why they came out with overhead cams to use lighter springs and less drag, not to make it cheaper. The Ford modular, when that came out, wasn't really, I don't think it was because it was cheaper. They could have stuck with the 302 and that would have been the cheapest.
It's actually because of just mass. It's movable mass. So you're not changing as much mass in directions at any RPM. So like with an overhead cam, you got a lifter, a push rod, a rocker arm that has to change directions, springs and all that. When you have an overhead valve, you either have like a radius arm rocker that's basic, or like a cam, valve under bucket style, and it's direct right on there. So there's very little mass. So yes, the springs can be lighter because you're changing less direction of mass at higher RPM.
I think, to tell you the truth, I think it was for longevity. I think they did it for longevity because it removes a lot of moving parts out of the valve train. And
that's what I'm saying is weight. Exactly.
Yeah, I think it was all 100% longevity. And if you really go back and look at it, short of the injector failures on the 4.6 modulars and the spark plug threaded, debacle of the 5.4 free valve. I would have to say that modular Ford was pretty much a tremendous success because a lot of them were still on the road and most of them got over 400,000 miles on them. And they were still knocking down like 28 miles a gallon. Now, the motor was big and humongous, like almost big as a 460. But it really was good on fuel. I had a couple of them, and all of them got over 25 miles a gallon.
Yeah, it's just from weight, too. Yeah, you're not moving as much weight to make the same power.
I think it was the longevity, and it might have been the horsepower number they were going after, but I don't think so. When that thing came out in 92, it was pretty anemic. But they did run forever. SSR Performance says that they're spinning hydraulic roller cams, big RPM these days. And I'm using stock stuff. I'll go out there on a limb and tell everybody the whole entire EZ302 project was to use stock stuff and try to compare it against the DZ302 and see exactly what GM would have, if they would have offered it. This is what the kind of power it would have made, and this is how it would have ran. And that was the idea behind it. I don't know where I'm going to go with it afterwards. I really wouldn't mind selling the engine to somebody that would want to make like a mock, Z28, or just have a DZ302 kind of concept engine in something that they drive. I mean, it is a really coveted engine. It's not hard to build one, but I did end up with a lot more money in the engine than I wanted because of the machine work.
Yeah, and they're spinning them to big RPMs these days, 100% because of the profiles. They're able to actually, with the computers, to make these profiles, they can get down to the fourth derivative of these things. So the ramp rates are much softer. So you're able to ramp them in so much faster and so much easier, and then change the direction so much easier to where you need less spring pressure. So that way you're bleeding off less of the lifter. Lifter technology's changed, but on the rollers, but really it comes down to 100% with the lobes is why they're doing it.
And I don't think my LT4 hot cam or my stock lifters are going, I know for a fact the stock push rod I got in is not going to handle any kind of serious RPM for extended use. It would probably collapse. But so Danny Boyd says, I think the first Gen 302 Chevys are basically the 350 horse 327 with the D-stroke kit. what's funny that you say that Holdner did a video where he did the DZ302, then he did an L79 327, and then he did the LT1 350 Chevy that came in like a 1970 Camaro. And they virtually had the same heads, the same camshaft, and all of the parts externally were the same, with the exception of the crank and the piston compression height, but they're all pretty much the same rod, even, I believe. The only difference is the 302 and the 327 were the small journal, and I think the 350 was the large journal. But and they all made relatively the same kind of horsepower and torque.
Just a different spots.
Actually, yeah, horsepower. Yeah, and it was all in completely different RPM spots.
Yeah,
you know. But what you found was the biggest bang for the buck. If you think about it, if they all make the same horsepower, the smallest cubic inch one is the most efficient. Right? That's what I liked about it. Is that's an interesting concept. You know, that you find out that the smaller cubic inch, if it's making almost the same amount of horsepower, if you really want to compare them apples to apples, the easiest way to do it is,
but it's RPM
per cubic inch and torque per cubic inch.
Yeah, but it's when you're talking about horsepower, it's all about the RPM too. Because if it's a 327 and a 350, but yet you got to spin it 500, 750 RPM more, at that RPM, a 350 and a 327 are moving the same amount of air through the engine.
Correct. Yeah.
So it technically it's more efficient, but if it's at the same RPM, but if it's at a higher RPM, they're moving the same amount of air, burning the same amount of fuel. They're just moving the RPM higher.
Yeah, the engine's spinning harder.
Yeah.
Tall Garage says parts for AMC V8 sadly aren't cheap. No, buddy, you've entered a whole new realm when you get into the weird, odd, off-brand stuff.
Yeah.
Your Buick Olds, Pontiac, and then your AMC V8. You are way out there in costly damn land, right? But yeah, it's cool that Edelbrock has some heads for him. And I tell you what, AMC, them suckers make some power, man. Their V8 came out like the latest. It was the last one out of all of them. So they saw everybody else's trials and tribulations and failures and successes and threw it all in one engine. And if you look at it, it's got it literally has like an oiling system like a Buick, which is its like biggest downfall. And then it has like cylinder heads like a small block Dodge. They're really odd, but
they flow so well.
But it does. It works. The whole combo works good. In my opinion, the best one they made was like that 304. The 304 has like a really good comparable bore and stroke ratio. Yeah. And I really like that 304. But
I like the 401.
The 401, it's big bore too.
Yeah, that thing's awesome. That thing my buddy had a 401 in like a AMC. What the hell was that thing? I don't know. It was one of those little like a Javelin, It was one of those that had it looked like the back of the car was kind of cut because it just looked funny, It was like the two-door version. Man, that thing would fly.
Well, the AMCs run good. They really do run good. They just have oiling issues like the Buicks did. Dallas, I don't think there's any reason your 302 Chevy won't take 7,200 hours. It'll probably take it all day long. I think what's going to happen is you're going to find the cam's going to fall on its face around 6,500. It's I want to say the duration on the intake's like 218 at 50 and then 222, I think, on the exhaust.
I think 65 is about it. Yeah.
Bear Rose says some demo derby guys get it. I'd swap them out an 80s tall deck 460 for their short deck high compression ones. All I had to do was swap it for them. They didn't care. Yeah. That's a good way to score some really good early 385 series stuff. Okay. Old McDonald has a car. Old technology is the most reliable technology. I'm beginning to think that that's 100% true now. EFI, for all those years up until about 2005 or 6, like they would run 200,000-300,000 miles, and I was impressed. That's like a lot of mileage, right? But man, when they started going to CAN bus stuff, holy crap.
Yeah.
I've never seen so many failures in my life. And it's like, ooh, no, I'm going back to weighted points and, the carburetors. Val 360 Jimmy says, nice to see you boys back again. We're super busy at work. I'll be watching what I don't catch now tonight, later on tonight when he gets home. Well, hey, have a cold one on us while you're watching it at home afterwards.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Nick the Van Man says that Chevrolet should have done all aluminum 396 with LS6 pattern top end, solid lifter 11-to-1 and 3x2 induction. would have been the perfect Nova, Camaro, or Vet engine. Man, I know them things like to rev something serious for a big block. Okay.
We're pretty far back on the.
I'm trying to catch up right now. Let's see. Oh, there. Dylan Levi said my combo would be an aluminum 6.2 block with a 4.125, 4 1/8 inch bore, and a 4.8 crank, and would be 300 to 400 pound motor capable of making a lot of horse. That's what we were trying to get you to do with your 6-liter block.
Yeah.
SSR saying shim the lifters, make them homemade short travels. Let her eat.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, okay. So Dylan saying my comment earlier was saying that if I build a motor for the class, it would be a bigger cubic inch because of the weight of the car. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you need as much big cubic inch as you could in your car. So you'd be up at, what is 368 cubes.
Yeah.
Paul Pahue says, at what RPM on a street motor are you much better off using a double roller chain over a good link timing?
It comes down to, is that really RPM? I would
spring
be
pressure, isn't it?
Spring pressure, exactly. If you're getting more than, like, say, if you're more than 150 on the seat, and I would say more than, like, say, 290 over the nose, then go to the double roller.
The my take on this is just like the big slick versus the small slick. If there is a single roller available and you're running street style spring pressures,
Leave it alone.
run that single roller.
Mhm.
It's going to eat up less power and it'll last plenty long. But generally the double rollers, when you run like solid flat tappet cam or a solid roller, and you're going to use it RPM for extended use.
Or even a hydraulic flat tappet. And if you're running a hydraulic flat tappet, that's really, say you got over, say, 230 degrees duration. Yeah, you should probably run a double roller at that, because you're going to be at about a 150 on the seat and about 300 over the nose at that point. And
Well,
so
it's going to spread. It spreads all that weight across all those rollers, right? So essentially, if you're looking at one that's like, let's say it's 300 pounds over the nose, you're sharing that 300 pounds across all of those rollers on. If you have a single roller, let's say there's 10 of them touching, so you're like 30 pounds on each one, right? But if you go to a double roller, you're looking at half that, 15 pounds on each roller.
And
so,
and it's really not the high RPM problem. Really, it's when you're down near idle. That's when it's when the harmonics. It's actually, trying to, it's going over the nose and it's going back and forth. You'll actually see the time shake on those. And the Buick V6s were notorious for that. They would have a problem with that.
Yeah, the shakers.
Yeah,
that's the Oddfire ones. If you've ever had an Oddfire V6, you'll know exactly what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Let's see. Keith Clearich says, Dallas, earlier you said the DZ would spin 8,000, 8,500. Did GM run a single or dual plane? No, I said it was run about 7,500 to $8,000, but they ran it was a high rise dual plane is what they ran from the factory. But in the trunk, when you bought those, you could option them out and get they had cross ram Edelbrocks that you could put on those things from the factory pretty much.
Yeah.
They also had the cam that came in the DZ302 was not, everyone says it's the Duntov 3030, but it's not. It actually had its own camshaft, but everyone took it out because it ran so much better with the Duntov 3030. And that's what they got swapped in. That virtually, I think, came in the trunk. Just most of that stuff in the 60s when it was race oriented. I don't know if you've ever heard of GM trunk option stuff, but that's what a lot of it was. Just like headers, I think, were a trunk option for that DZ302. Let's see. SSR, they're using hydraulic lifters. Though solid is expensive. Oh, okay. Okay, SSR Performance. They are just rebranded Johnson or Morel short travel lifters. 1 second.
Yeah, so they shouldn't cause any more wear problems or issues. Yeah, a lot of those places are just rebranding their other people's
Give me
lifters.
just a second here, all right? Somebody's at my back door.
Oh,
Give me just a second. I'll be right back.
okay. Oh, hey, I'm here. So we'll go back down. We're actually going to jump ahead. I can't see any of these things here. So I'm trying to stay away from the shot money and finding a 6.2. And this is from Levi. Less than $2,000 probably. Selling anything I can really have. Awesome. And scratch that. LT1 is a solid. Okay. My bad. The 340 horse 327 was a solid and had the backwards Dan. Oh, sorry. The print was really small. I can't bring them up on this, so I apologize for that. But let's get back to these hydraulic lifters and the profiles. I had to kind of skip over that real quick, but having the computers nowadays, back at when I was at Crower and I was designing lifters, masters, you basically get a profile, and then you would use different types of tape and whatnot, and then you would get your curvature, and then you would put it into your easy roll, and then you would get your profiles. But now with the computer, you can actually do all 4 derivatives right on the profile, and that's the real magic that's been happening with the and with Spintron technology too. You can run 10 million cycles on one of these lifters, and then hold it at 7,000 RPM, and then increase oil pressure, decrease oil pressure, see what it's going to do, and then you can have one bank set up at, say, 20 thousandths off the bottom, and one is 20 thousandths from the top. How does it work? Does it bleed down? And then you can cut the holes in the block, and then we use a laser imaging on the valve, so we can actually watch the valves open and close in real time, and then it plots it, so it tells us how much balance is happening at any given point. It's actually really cool. It's really changed the game. When Billy was at Comp, he really changed the game big time on some of those profiles.
Sorry, I had to take a break there. Someone was knocking on my back door. It was my neighbor. But so I told him, like, oh, no, thanks. Bye. Anyway, Danny Boyd says, I just checked the L79 was the first hydraulic performance small block Chevrolet cam. So if you remember, Chevrolet, way back in the day, some of you may not remember because you might not be old enough. Way back in the day, you used to be able to buy Chevrolet camshafts from the Chevrolet dealer, and you could get the 350 horse 327 or the 375 horse 327 camshaft. And that was the one everybody immediately grabbed, was that 375 horse 327 cam, and they crammed it in their 1980s Monte Carlo with the 305. They didn't run good. But you used to be able to score those cams lifters for about $100 at the dealer. So that was a good deal. But I'm assuming that the L79 was probably the 375 horse 327. Who knows? It may have been a solid, that one. I don't know. Let's see here. Okay, so Tom Brown saying, on a street car, is it logical to match your stall speed to a few hundred RPM less than your highway cruising speed?
On a street car. Yes. You want to have it just a little lower because it's on the street car. Now, on a race car, you want to have it a little. So if you want to have your converter just about 500 RPM lower than, say, your peak torque, or say 750, so that way you can flash it in, but you don't really want that to happen on the street car every single time you're coming off the light. So I would have it pretty close, or just a couple hundred RPM less. In a race car, I would have it a lot less, so that way you can get the flash up to it.
Let's see. Okay, SSR Performance saying, my bad, the 340 horse 327 was solid, had it backwards. Okay, so they're talking about, I guess, the cams from all the.
I was reading through those and I couldn't catch it.
And Danny Boyd saying all the 327s, all other than the L79, were solid, I think. Okay. BNR Racing is saying, Professor P, does Calico do a good job on DLC coating lifters for my Isky Pontiac V8 solid flat tappet lifters I bought? I think it was 2005.
Yeah, they did them when I was at Crower. I believe it was Calico is the one that would do, but they didn't do just the face. They did the whole lifter, so it was very expensive. Very expensive.
like this comment right here. So Brooks said, well, no one killed him right after Yuri appeared, Dallas. So I didn't get murdered, and I'm not buried in my backyard. I
Right.
was kind of concerned because someone was knocking on my door, and it's like 8 o'clock at night, and it's freaking cold outside. But it just turned out to be my neighbor. So, and I mean, thanks for taking care of me. But let's see. BNR Racing says I have a set of Crowder solid flat tappet lifters with EDM cool face oiling, bought about 2010. Like to DLC those too.
You can't. Because of the EDM hole on there, that's gonna create a little riser on it, and it'll actually cause it to crack and flake right there because it's so hard. It won't. If you have I know exactly what the cool face is. That's the EDM hole that's basically cut. That's just off center on that. But yeah, you can't DLC coat those. Now, there was also one too where we were cutting the flats on the side of the lifters. You can DLC coat those, but you can't do the ones with the EDM hole in the center, unfortunately.
All right. So Nick the Van Man says I put an L79 cam in his 305 and his Astro. I do not recommend. It made 235 horsepower on the engine dyno and 275 foot-pounds of torque at 4,300 with HO heads. And to tell you the truth, that's about almost what a stock, probably about what a stock 350 TPI made from the factory in about 1991 or two. They were, the torque, I think on the 350 was a little bit more. It was like 360 foot-pounds of torque. But it obviously didn't work in this combination, you could see. And unfortunately, the HO heads, the problem with the 305, if you really want to know what the issue is with the 305, is the bore is so small, it can't take advantage of the Chevrolet's valve sizing. That's what makes the 4-inch bore Chevrolet just so deadly, is that it can actually take advantage of the valves and the capability that the heads have, which most engines can't. So when you get that small bore like that, you can't take advantage of the how much potential air the head could flow. And then Danny Boyd says the L79 wants compression. If it was designed and engineered around 11.5 to 1 compression, you have to have that.
You gotta have it. It's one set.
Yeah. And any of the Chevrolet small blocks that were like performance oriented were all in that category of 10.5 to 11.5 to 1 compression. Let's see. Paul Pihoy says, can I buy a DLC coated hydraulic flat tappet lifter for a Pontiac?
I believe
yes.
so. I believe they're actually in stock right now. It's the BOP style lifter. But
you did tell me that originally when we showed this on here, was that they have a BOP specific lifter from Edelbrock, well, from Comp, that has a DLC face, but it has the correct oil band height on it.
Yeah. So here's this is the difference between our DLC coated and everyone else's right now, is that they'll DLC coat everything, where this is actually just DLC coated right on the face itself. And just to show you, these lifters, these are used lifters. That's a used lifter. That's how good it looks. Look at that.
Polished by the EDM, or not EDM. Oh my God. What is it? Polished by DLC.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, but these are going to be in another project of mine for a Slant 6. I'm going to put those in. I got another cam that I'm testing, and going to go on one of these engines here, and I'm going to beat the crap out of it with those.
BNR Racing says, do the lifters need to be stripped and gutted for DLC, Professor P?
Yes, you're going to have to take them all apart, and especially if someone else is going to do it, because I don't think they're going to do just the face. I mean, I'm not really sure, because we have to do a special process on ours, which I can't talk about. But when other companies do it, I think they do the whole lifter, and they actually polish it down, because it does add a little bit. There's
thickness.
Yeah, thickness to it. I think it's a tenth, 0.0001 is a tenth of a thousandth of an inch.
All right. So BNR says, gotcha. Professor P on EDM cool face can't DLC. Okay.
That's right.
Nick the Van Man says the L79 cam was a manual transmission only camshaft. Boy, did my Turbo 400 hate it. Even with a 3200 stall, it sucked ass. That's because the gear spread on that Turbo 400 was too much.
Yeah.
For the 305 with the L79 cam. that would have came with like a Muncie or a T10 4-speed that had a much closer gear ratio spread on it.
Hey,
So
speaking of that, a 305 Chevy, what's the bore and stroke on a 305?
3.736 on a bore, and then the stroke is 3.48, same as a Chevrolet small block 350.
Okay, so that's a kind of a square engine then, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
It's actually very much like a 300 Buick.
I was going to say, so if the DZ 302 and then like say a 305, that would be really cool to see. Is the DZ 302 better than a 305 with comparable heads?
Well, and so that's where I was looking at this, my Easy 302. I could squeeze this for a freaking couple of years worth of content. I really could if I wanted to, because the ideal thing, if GM was going to offer one and it was only 302 cubic inches, the ideal head to put on it would have been a Vortec 305 head. And then what you do is you build a Vortec 305 and you compare them side by side, same camshaft, same heads, same everything except for different bore and stroke. And you could see the power difference just the bore is going to make. And I think what you're going to find is it's huge. And it's not really just the bore. I think it's the bore plus the piston speed being so much less. The rod to stroke ratio is different. It's going to be a happier engine, I think, just because the rod to stroke ratio is so much different.
Yeah.
Okay. BNR says it's 50 microns thick DLC typically.
No, 1 to 5 microns. Like 1 to 5 microns. So either 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5 microns. Usually, it's a thin, and it's usually basically it's just it's super thin.
Tom Brown, and he asked the question: what would generate more heat, a 2,500 stall converter running close to its stall limit on the highway, or a 1,700 stall running under high load, like going up a mountain pass? And then James from SSR Performance says more stall makes more heat normally.
Always.
Yeah, and that's it. No matter what, it always is the case.
You're going to shear fluid, so it's going to make more heat.
Right. Well, and the way that Professor P and I have talked about this quite a few times, because as you guys know, 8 minutes in tonight, you found out I'm obsessed with the switch pitch transmission. And the converter, what happens is inside the converter, it has a variable stator in it. And all you're changing is the pitch on that stator when you do that, when you go from low stall to high stall. It does, and if you think about it, when you buy a high stall converter, generally it's a smaller diameter converter. And what it is they keep the same stator in it, and the large diameter or small diameter, it's just got the same stator in it. They just decrease the size. So because the size is smaller, it's got less fluid being pushed across the stator. Now,
can I interject real quick? So just so because it's a smaller diameter, the fluid actually goes around the outside and it gets shot back in. So the bigger the diameter, the higher the velocity is, because it gets slung out at a faster, obviously a point from farther out is going faster. So therefore the fluid's going around much faster, and there's a greater volume of fluid coming around. Okay. Right. That's one of the reasons too.
So in switch pitch, the diameter stays the same, and all you're doing is changing the pitch on the stator itself. So you still have a lot of interaction of the volume of fluid, a large volume of fluid, but the stator is less efficient. It has less pitch, right? And so you go from a fairly efficient combination to a very inefficient combination. But what it does is puts the engine in its torque band and allows it not to detonate. And it works well because all this technology, when it came out, Buick was the first one to use this. And it was in the Dynaflow originally, which had 1 speed. And so it made sense to have a 2-speed torque converter. When they applied it to the Turbo 400, it had 3 speeds. And then you had the switch pitch, which it didn't make any sense because it literally was always in its perfect power point. And it's like when you drive one, it's weird because it's like a CVT. They kind of just stay at 1 RPM and they just kind of hum there. But what I found is, in a towing application, it's absolutely killer because it keeps the engine in its peak torque, like power point the whole time. You have all kinds of variation. And I think when I throw a gear vendors on the back of that, it's going to make it that much better. Let's see here. Clayton's Toolbox. On mechanical roller lifters, how important is it to have direct lube? I assume direct lube means I don't know. It hand pressurized oil to the lifters.
High pressure oiling to the roller lifters, to the actual wheel. So that way it's got a little EDM hole that goes down. So it gets high pressure oil to the shaft, either one for usually roller bearings, but if it's a bushing, then it has to have it. Here's the thing is then the Cookie Monster here, I do not have direct lube because I'm trying to keep away the windage. So I want the windage to stay away from it. It basically is only getting oil from splash oiling that comes up. Now, that is good in like an older style engine, but if you have like say an LS or a Gen 3 Hemi where the lifter is kind of kind of encapsulated, in an area so that way it gets less windage, you got to have the direct lube. That's the only way it's going to get oiled. But if it's an older style engine, it's not really necessary. Just basically prime the engine oil on the car and then let it go. And if it sits for over a year, pull them out, dip them in oil again or an ATF, clean them out, and then put them back in. Not necessary.
All right. So BNR says Professor P didn't cams make a high-tech hydraulic flat tap at lifter made for 7,500 RPM plus. I seem to recall from the 90s had a C circular snap ring for push rod seat.
I don't remember the name of theirs, comp cams, but I do know that they used to run these. They used to call them cheater lifters. Literally, they were
stock cars.
Huh?
They were for stock cars. That's what I remember them for.
Exactly. Yep. So they were just cheater lifters. Literally, it's all the hydraulics out of it. It's got a little spring in it, and you just set them 20 thousandths off the bottom. And in fact, how I learned about a lot of this stuff is I got some of the old 904 cheater lifters when I was at Crower. When I lived in San Diego, I went down to Crower to buy some, and I had to adjust my valve train for it. But I fell in love with those things because they were quiet and I didn't have to adjust the valves. But man, could you just rev the crap out of your engine? So yeah, but I don't know. I can look into that though.
Well, those were so stock car classes required you had to have a hydraulic flat tappet cam.
I'm gonna take a picture of this.
Well, there were some stock car classes that required a hydraulic flat tappet cam. And that was before like your 305 class or anything like that. When the 305 class went away or came out, this requirement, a lot of them went away because you went to 305 cubic inch limit.
So they had a hydraulic flat tappet. Then when people were getting around that, then they went to a lift rule and they went to cut nose. So then you had to have the those type of lifters. Because there's no other way to run the car because they were just so out of control.
Man says Dallas and Professor P. Something I wanted to mention. I used that Lunati hydraulic roller retrofit link bar lifters with my Lunati hydraulic roller cam, dead silent using 10W30. Nice. I promise, I'm telling you, that's the number for those lifters. Now, if you pour 1040 in it or 1540 in it, you're going to hear them.
Yeah,
I promise. But yeah, 1030 seems to be the magic number for them. BNR says Oldsmobile had switch pitch turbo 400 425 V8 cars. So Buick and Oldsmobile, that was an option, is to have switch pitch. That's how GM justified making it. See, what is going on? I'm getting balloons attacked me. You can't just make switch pitch for like I said, Buick made the turbo 400. That torque converter design was a carryover from the Dynaflow. You cannot just make an entire transmission for one manufacturer for it to be beneficial. So what they did is they offered Turbo 400 came available in Pontiac, Buick, Olds, and Cadillac. But Buick, Oldsmobile, and Cadillac had an option for switch pitch. I'm sorry, Buick and Oldsmobile had the option for switch pitch. Cadillac, it came standard. So if you're looking for like a good switch pitch BOP pattern, Turbo 400, go find it under your nearest Cadillac because almost all of them will have it. But it was so cost ineffective, they ended up getting rid of it because it was absolutely unnecessary on a 3-speed automatic transmission. And it is necessary in a towing application. I'm telling you, it works great. And it's not necessary. It just makes it work better. Old McDonald had a car, says, if I recall, the LA engine required putting in tubes into the oil gouges to prevent low oil pressure when using roller lifters.
Okay. Yes, but here's the thing: it's not just it's not for that. Really, what it's for is to keep. So you don't need all that oil pressure. In fact, I'm going to do a video about this because if you prime a small block Mopar and you do not have copper tubes in there, you're running a high volume, high pressure, whatever type of pump. If you try to move your number 7 lifter, it's literally almost impossible to move it. You can actually prime it up, you see that you have oil pressure and you're at 70 pounds. That thing locks up solid. With the copper tubes, what I do is I put a copper tube in there and then I put a tiny little pinhole in that thing, like a 40 or 50 thousandths hole. That way you're not getting, a whole fish, a fish mouth of oil, because it's not just this big 1/2 inch oil hole going through there. It's a tiny little pinhole with a copper tube. So yes, always run the copper tubes in a small block Mopar, even if it's a hydraulic. Always run them.
All right. Tom Brown says, oh no, dang it. I was deburring my 455 block and just touched the inside of one of my lifter bores just above the oil hole about 2 thousandths deep. What should I do, or am I still good?
Be fine.
Huh?
I would say he's be fine.
I've never done this, but I could see myself doing this. And it's just above the oil hole.
Yeah, just leave it. Just put a little.
What I would do is I'd clean it up real good with like a
emery cloth. Call it good.
No, I wouldn't even. I was going to say a wheel cylinder hone and get that nice and smooth, and then put your lifter in there. And if it doesn't wobble, it's probably going to be fine.
Yeah.
But,
I would just put emery cloth just on the tip of my finger, right where that's at, and I would only touch that just to see if there's a little edge, just right on that little spot.
That's what I was getting at. Is you just knock the edge down, you're going to be probably fine.
Yeah, just knock the edge down,
oil,
and then put the lifter in it. And call it good.
If anything, the only thing I can think of that would be bad about that is this: when the lifter's in full upward travel, it still's not going to uncover the band. So I think it would be fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
I mean, even if it does leak a little bit right there, weep oil out. It's only when it's in the up position and the oil is not coming up and around. It's actually traveling around the lifter at that point when the band is up.
Yeah.
So it's just going to leak out whatever's in the band and then go right back down the hole.
Don't even worry about it, man.
Yeah. Okay. BNR Racing. In the 1990s, I ran a comp cams, high-tech, solid Pontiac V8 cam and lifters. The part number is that. 255 at 50 on the intake and 266 at 50 on the exhaust.
Nice.
That's a healthy cam.
On a 106.
Yeah. That sucker probably sounded really nasty.
Being thumped.
Yeah. Let's see. Turbo 400 was engineered for a 2.5-ton truck originally. Way overbuilt. Cadillac had its first 64. Google said Cadillac had it first. No. 64 is when it replaced the Dynaflow. And Buick had it in 64 as well. So, and then back then it was not even called the Turbo 400. It was called the Super Turbine 400. And endured in ProMod's 5,000 horsepower today. Yes, and it was also available in Bentleys. And it was available in Jaguar and buses. Any of the GM buses built at that time. Let's see. Clayton's Toolbox says, I have 2 switch pitch Turbo 400 Olds transmissions in storage. I tell you what, Clayton's Toolbox, the nasty stuff that you race on the street, or well, actually have for race cars, it might be worthwhile getting one of those Olds Turbo 400 switch pitches and cut the bell housing off and put on a JW Ultra bell and bolt it up behind whatever race car you got this month. Danny Boyd says, did 442s ever get switch pitch? Technically they did, but not the good switch pitch like you're thinking. Most of the switch pitches came in like the full-size cars, so they still had good acceleration and gas mileage. The 442s would have come with the Super Turbine 300 and some of the small 330 cubic inch 442s. You could have got that Super Turbine 300 switch pitch. I don't know if any of them ever came with a Turbo 400. I do not think so. Matter of fact, I don't believe so at all. Even the Buick stuff that, like big block 455 stuff, didn't have a switch pitch. Even the Nailhead stuff didn't have a switch pitch in a mid-size car.
Hey, let's get to those rules.
Is it that time? Everybody's tired of hearing about switch pitching. Okay.
No, it's
here's
820.
interesting.
We got time.
EMR says Ferrari used the Turbo 400. I did not know that.
I didn't know that either.
Yes, 38 Racing says that the AMC used the Turbo 400. They did, and so did Jeep.
Yeah. I actually have an AMC 400 in there, and just the shell, and also have an AMC 727 case.
All right, let me see if I can get this thing pulled up. Okay, can we see that?
Yep, we got it.
All right, so these are the rules for the Triple Crown class. I know that John Wilburn is cringing right now.
He loves it.
Got here, and we're going to show these rules, but okay. All right, so the whole idea here was it's pretty much everything we've talked about before in the past. And I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, and this may be like the end all be all for the Triple Crown class rules. I'm pretty sure, but we'll see how it goes.
It's a good starting point for this year.
It is, and I think the whole idea is that we talked about this and batted around for long enough that we had to just put something on paper and then start from somewhere and then see what happened, how it evolved from that point forward. Because you're never going to be able to outthink everybody on all this stuff. Because let's face it, if somebody sits down and reads his rules, they have a completely different perspective than I do, and they come up with something that's totally outside the box almost immediately. So, but the body is a factory OEM rear wheel drive car, truck, SUV, or van body style allowed with OEM wheelbase plus or minus 1 inch. So that means like no altering the wheelbases. That's not the intent of the class. Glass windows required, original location firewall mandatory, and then fiberglass hood, deck lid bumpers are allowed. Chassis, OEM front and rear frame rails, full length required. So that means you can't cut anything out of the frame rails. It's going to be the exact factory frame rail is the idea. The whole premise behind this was you wanted no four links, no back halves, no tube chassis, no quarter panels and a roof on a full race chassis with fiberglass, everything else. We're trying to keep it for the regular person to just go grab something. And as long as it's all steel, throw it. Well, you don't even have to have it all steel. It's mostly steel with the exception of the hood, deck lid, bumpers. You're pretty much ready to go. And you can have steel. You don't have to have fiberglass anything. Mm-hmm. So it's telling you no frame notching or frame notching is allowed for tire clearance only. And that's just the frame. You can cut it away. Like the big thing is like on a G body is you go in there and you take like an inch out of the frame rail and then plate it. And that way you have enough wheel well that you can put a like 9 inch slick or 10.5-inch slick in this case in there. Okay. Factory front and rear suspension pickup points are mandatory, meaning you cannot cut the suspension out of the car or the pickup points to modify it, make it coil over in the whole 9 yards. Rear suspension as OEM design for the vehicle. So if your car came with a factory leaf spring, you're stuck with a factory leaf spring. That's the downside of you picking that body style, right? Every single car, every single body, and every single engine is going to have its own pluses and minuses. And in this case, if you pick a leaf spring car, the leaf spring, the lack of adjustability on the leaf spring is the one that it's downside. Now you can use Caltrax. There's nothing stopping you from using a Caltrax or a Lakewood or something like that nature. Yeah. But you are limited to a leaf spring, triangulated with coil spring. That's like a GM or a Fox body Ford. Lower control arm, panhard bar with rod coil spring. I don't know why it says that. With rod coil spring. Okay. Either way, whatever that's what I was writing there means like a Camaro, a third gen Camaro has lower control arms and a panhard rod. A B body car from the 60s has lower control arms and a panhard rod. But the Camaro, the third gen Camaro also has, besides the panhard rod, also has like I guess it'd be like a single ladder bar almost. I can't remember what they call it. It might have been the panhard rod. Okay. No back half, no ladder bars, no tube chassis, no long travel front ends. Mini tubs are allowed. to the outside frame rail and for tire clearance only. Caltrax traction bars, slapper bars, adjustable control arms, and adjustable panel bars are allowed and encouraged, and as long as the factory suspension pickup points are used. No ladder bars allowed unless factory equipped, which there was no one that was really had a ladder bar, with the exception of like a Gen 3 Camaro had a single ladder bar, I guess. Interior, you can, as long as you have the basic stuff to go for your ET, you're good. You don't. There's nothing required in there. 38 Racing is saying that's a torque arm on those Camaros. So that's what I was getting at.
Yeah, torque arm.
And then the 87 GNX had the torque arm too. But if you show up with an 87 GNX to fit in this class, you're probably screwing up, because this is a naturally aspirated class. Okay, engine, naturally aspirated, no nitrous, no turbo, no supercharged, no power adder whatsoever. All OEM small block V8, V6, inline 6, or inline 4-cylinder engine combinations only. I threw that in there because there was so many people. Why should it be limited to V8s? And you know what? That's a damn good question. If you can make the cubic inch on a V6, or you can fit the class with an inline 4-cylinder, have at it, man. But it's going to have to fit this class.
And push rod.
Right. It's got to be a push rod engine. So 9 pounds or greater vehicle weight per cubic inch limit. So that means this is essentially what you have to weigh per cubic inch, 9 pounds per cubic inch. Now, the thing is, there is a minimum weight in this class, right? Isn't that right? Didn't we do a minimum weight?
Yeah, 2,700
cubic inch, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So engine manufacturer must be same as vehicle manufacturer. Push rod engine, carbureted, OEM valve angles only, plus or minus 1 degree, just based on milling your head. You might get it off that 1 degree. Okay. It will be randomly measured. No billet heads, OEM mass-produced cast iron blocks only, points ignition, electronic ignition, distributorless ignition with MSD6 ignition, or OEM EFI computer used only for timing control. Minimum weight is 2,700 pounds. Maximum cubic inch, 368. So there's your minimum weight for the class. That's you collecting every single weight break and being at the minimum weight of the class.
And you can't be under that.
Correct. No sheet metal intakes. Wet sup engines only. Engine weight breaks. Single 4150 carb is 100 pounds. Single spread bore, 200 pounds. Distributorless ignition, you have to add 100 pounds. And the reason behind this is, I'm going to throw that out there. The reason behind this is the distributorless ignition has no funky ignition anomalies to it. It is always going to be working perfectly. And if you are a racer with points ignition or like an HEI, you're going to have mechanical weights to deal with, and that shouldn't put you at a disadvantage. So what we did is we disadvantaged the guys that have the perfect ignition system so they can run with you without running all over you.
Exactly.
Okay. Let's see. Vehicle is weighed as raced with driver and fuel after a pass. So that means if your minimum weight is 2,700 pounds, don't be 2,700 pounds rolling into the water box. You want to be like 2,710 pounds, right? Because you're going to do a burnout. You're going to lose a little bit of weight from your tire. Then you're going to consume all the fuel down the track. And then you're probably going to sweat out, 2 pounds of weight in your own body. Okay. Right. When you weigh, you want to be overweight. You want to be as close as you can get, but you don't want to be cutting so close that you're at 26.99 because you're going to get thrown out. So that's what you want. Okay. Transmission, any automatic, and then any clutch assisted manual. That means it needs the clutch to leave the line. Okay. It doesn't need the clutch to be rode through the gears. We've talked about this. Shane and I talked about this extensively.
Yeah.
Because
how are you going to police it?
We're both guys that like you have to push the clutch, but the reality is this: if you're leaving on the clutch, it's just like an automatic almost, right? But you do get a 100-pound weight break for having a manual, and that's because you have no torque converter. That was 100% the reason. Okay, tires 26 by 8.5 slicks or less, any brand, no W or wide, less than or equal to 3,000 pounds. So that means if you weigh 3,000 pounds, you essentially have to run, if it's 3,000 pounds or less, you have to run that 26 by 8.5 inch slick. The 28 by 10.5-inch slick is allowed for anybody that's greater than or equal to 3,000 pounds. So if you look at this, also the big hangup is 3,000 pounds. You could run an 8.5-inch or a 10.5-inch slick. That's right.
Yeah.
And that's because the class was geared around 3,000 pounds. If you weigh 3,000 pounds as it goes down the track, you should be able to choose which slick you want.
Yeah, as long as you're not under 3,000 pounds. BNR racing.
Well, you can be under 3,000 pounds with your weight breaks.
Yeah.
The
Yes,
minimum
but
weight is 2,700.
Yes, but if you're 3,000 pounds, you can't have the big tire though.
Oh, correct. Yes. Yeah. If you're 3,000 pounds, you can choose either one. If you're 3,001 pounds, you have to run the 28 by 10.5, or technically anything over 3,000 pounds can run any slick they want. They can always run a smaller.
Exactly. Yeah. At BNR Racing, you can't run a big block in this. One of the rules under the engine on the first line is that it's a small block V8, a V6, inline 6, or 4-cylinder. So no big blocks at all in this class, in this whole thing.
Okay, and we'll get back to the questions here in a little bit because I got to address Mr. Wilburn not cringing. He says, "Okay, I know he's not cringing. I was just giving him crap." But wheelie bars prohibited. Don't even think about it. Your grandma's fine with a walker. Leave it at grandma's house.
Yes.
Okay. Fuel. Any gasoline only. No E85, no diesel, no ethanol, no methanol, no oxygenated race fuels, no nitromethane, no benzene, no hydrazine, no propane, no electricity, or any other exotic racing fuel in any percentage is prohibited. So just bring race gas. And preferably like 110 would be ideal.
Yes. Okay.
Safety equipment. At a minimum, each racer is required to meet the safety specs of the respective ET they run. So just look in the basic rule book. If your car is running, 670s in the 8th mile, make sure it fits the 670 requirement, which is going to be like a minimum 6-bar roll bar, and then a
helmet,
minimum 5-point harness,
and jacket.
Your helmet and a jacket. That's going to be about the extent of it.
It's pretty simple.
Yeah. And that was the idea, was to keep a lot of the costs down. Now, we'll go back and we'll address some of this stuff. So BNR says the 2+2 Ferrari had the turbo 400. Okay.
Wow, I didn't know that.
AMC used a lot of 727s.
Mm-hmm.
Levi says, "Am I the only person that hates the whole flashlight?" Hold on a second. Man, where does this thing start at?
It was hammering out there pretty good.
Okay. Dylan Levi says, "Man, didn't realize the suspension rule was so strict. My upper torque boxes are modified, but I belong in small tire class as class filler." No, you can use modified upper torque boxes. You cannot you cannot remove your torque boxes and put in some other kind of suspension pickup point. Yeah. That's what the idea is if you've modified the factory stuff, if you've bolstered, especially this, if you've bolstered the factory stuff,
it's good.
You're fine. It's just when you take those things out and you put like a tube chassis in there, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah. What it means with factory pickup points is it still has to have a bolt that holds a piece in somewhere in that location. Reinforced is fine.
38 racing question. Can the OEM PCM also control the transmission? Yeah, I don't see why not, as long as it's not controlling the fueling. That was the whole idea, is we were trying to keep the factory computer from controlling the fueling and
traction control.
And traction control. That was the big one we were trying to stay away from.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted them to have to use a carburetor, and because that way you don't have the perfect fuel curve the entire time, and to make it cheaper. Some of these guys, yeah, I don't know. You could open a can of worms with the EFI. I hate it.
I know. That's why I just want to stay away from it for this class. It makes it easier.
So the 6-liter 366 cubic inch engine has to be standard bore if it's going to fit in this class. Because if you bore that sucker 30 over, she's out. 368 is the maximum. And yes, and Shane's already addressed it. You can't use the big blocks. Mm-hmm. Now, a 305 V6 you could use.
Yeah. Boy, that would make a sound, wouldn't it?
It would sound cool. because it's considered a big block V6. But let's see that Danny Boyd liked the wheelie bar rule. Let's see. Okay. And BNR saying the 351 Cleveland is a great one to buy. This is, if you notice, we did not outlaw the Cleveland. So you can run a Cleveland in this thing, but just remember, there's other ringers in there too. That's not just the Cleveland, right? The 331 first gen Hemi is one. And then the, what was the other one that we were saying was going to be an absolute killer? 331 Chevrolet small block would be pretty killer.
Gen 3 Hemi.
The Gen 3 Hemi would be a killer. And then the LS, we were talking about the 6-liter with a 4.8 crank would be a killer.
It's funny. I must have built.
What's that?
I must have built probably 100 engines, just, running them through different scenarios to try to get horsepower numbers.
Oh, in your head for this kind of setup?
No, I actually built them on computer. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Blue Grit Garage saying, does this car have to run a hood? Not that I'm aware of.
No.
I mean, there's nothing lighter than no hood.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's got to have fenders in the front. I mean, you can't have, when a car show up with just like a tube chassis, It's got to drive on the street.
What I'd like to see is like way back in the heyday of super gas, it was a 950 index way back in the day before it became a 990 index. And guys would show up and let's say they were running like A gas or B gas and the car was running 10 flat. And then they lost in their A gas class. They would jump into super gas and pull as much weight off of the cars as they could. And there used to be like 55 through 57 Chevrolets with no front ends on them, just a motor hanging out there. And they'd try to run in that 950 index class and cut as much weight as possible. And I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, that's like, how committed are you?
Yeah.
Let's see. And Barrow is saying that BNR, as much as I love the Cleveland, I'd do a 302 for this. You know what? I would do a 302 probably with a set of 2-barrel Cleveland heads on it in this class. That's really what I would probably do with a set of Aussie closed chamber Cleveland heads, 2-barrel Cleveland heads on this on a 302. Let's see. Tom Brown says, are the no hop top rear A arms for the Buicks and other A bodies cars allowed? Yes, they're allowed. Factory
Absolutely.
upper control arms. Yep. Let's see. There you go. 331. That's exactly the board stroke I would run in a Ford.
Yeah. We talked about that engine many times. That was like our number one engine we talked about.
38 Racing. What about adding the rear factory second upper rear control arm in the early 60s GM frame? You can run them. If you got a factory one, we're never going to turn you away for anything factory. Yes. Even if it's an aftermarket replacement of the factory one. If it was available from the factory, bring it. Just like if you wanted to go under there, crawl up under the car, and your early GM, your 60s B-body cars, if you wanted to freaking Swiss cheese Catalina that frame, I'd have no problems with it. Okay. 38 Racing. Pontiac had no big block. I know. I know. But you're limited. You're limited to 368 cubic inch. That's what you're limited to. So if you're running a Pontiac, and if it's 400 cubic inch, you're out. If it's 367 cubic inch, you're good.
Yeah. So. And we have a way to check it. We can pump it.
Yeah, we're going to pump it. But but we're saying there is no big blocks allowed in this. So if you're showing up with like a 427 Chevrolet and it's not a small block Chevrolet, well, matter of fact, if it's 427, it's going home anyway. But if you show up with, a big block designated Chevrolet, you're going home. You're not going to be allowed to run. Racing says, how are you going to identify Pontiac? I'm going to pump them. Mm-hmm. We're going to pump every single engine that comes through this. So regardless of what you show up with, if it pumps big, it's going home.
Or whatever you pump, that's what you have to weigh.
Right. But yes, but it's going to pump and it's going to tell us how many cubic inch it is. So if I was you, I would build something like they built for Trans Am with the Pontiac with the rammer four heads. So that's what I would run.
Yeah.
And you're going to be totally fine. But Pontiac did have some cool. Their 350. They had a badass 350. Let's see, the Oldsmobile had the ramrod. I think I don't remember. One of them had the ramrod. I think it was the Oldsmobile was the ramrod, and then Pontiac had the HO 350 HO.
Yeah.
I'd build one like that. And then Andy said the same thing. These are going to get pumped. So, Dylan Levi says, where can I find a rule sheet for this? I'm going to send it to my friend. He's got 315 subs and fits this class to a T. Okay. So, here's the thing. This is available on the No Name Nationals page where you go for registration. This is the No Name National Square site. If you can see up here at the top, No Name National Square site, that's where this is located. John gracefully put this up here when we were asking about a place to post the rules. And so now it's on here so everyone can see it, and you can go download it and look at it whenever you want or print it off from there. It doesn't cost you anything, and then that's it.
I actually have a link to it. I don't know if one of the mods can put it up there, but if not, I could think I'll try to put it up there.
SSR Performance says, I didn't see anything about all the street legal amenities, tags, insurance, etc., or making a cruise. Is that out? No, we're still going to do a cruise, but you don't have to have any of the legality stuff. What's happening is the sheriff's office from whatever county Sykeston is, and I can't remember off the top of my head right now. They're going to escort the cars to Lambert's. So the whole idea is you want to be able to drive it to Lambert's and back. We want it to be part of the Lambert's car show. It wasn't meant to be like drive around, go to the drive-in, and go through the drive-through at the McDonald's. It was meant to just essentially drive that 7 miles from the track to Lambert's and back.
Yeah, and to be in this class, you have to make the drive. Well, it's funny is I posted it on the site, but it won't. I'm not a mod, even though I'm on the live. I can't put it up there.
Okay, so BNR saying like to race, but not going Pontiac 350. It's up to you, man. It's your entire choice. But it may be 354 cubic inches for a Pontiac 350, but it doesn't matter. We're just pumping them, and if it's bigger than 368, it's out. So that's it. And your weight just needs to be appropriate with your cubic inch.
Yeah. So whatever you get, whatever you build, times up by 9. That's
Yeah.
your minimum weight.
Yeah, but you can't be more than 368 cubes. And the only reason that we're doing that, limiting it to 368 cubes, is because we're trying to keep the cost down, and we're wanting to just like see if we can get some cars to show up and how fun it's going to be first before you start expanding it.
Yeah.
38 Racing says, hoping other tracks pick up this class. That would be cool, but I doubt they will since we're not chasing any tracks to cram these rules down their throat. Well, I'll see what's going to happen after this whole rigmarole with divorce February. So I have a better idea what I'm doing.
If this takes off, we could actually make it a real true triple crown, and we could do at least a minimum of 3 races somewhere.
Yeah, 3 different tracks. That would be kind of cool. 3
different tracks, yeah.
Bear Rose Garage says, well, you don't have to go home if you don't qualify. You can always call out the winner of the Triple Crown, video it, and get a couple good videos and good times out of it. Yeah, exactly. You're not. Exactly. I'm just saying you're not going to participate in the Triple Crown. You can hang around and you can do the brackets. You could do 28, 10, 5. You could call somebody out and have a race. That's fine. That's entirely up to you. I'm not trying to limit your fun. We're trying to give you a cheap and like alternative to a sportsman heads-up class where it's a cost-effective class. If you haven't looked at 28, 10, 5 is almost to the point where no one can compete money-wise.
It's a $100,000 car at this point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. B&R Racing, Coyotes can't because it's going to be a pushrod engine. So, and then the LSs and the Gen 3s have a weight penalty for that exact reason.
Let's see. Dylan Levi's want to know how I got to that class. All right, how I got to that link. Okay.
Can you go? I tried to put it
I'm
on.
trying to do it right now. We'll see if I can. All right. Let's see if it'll post. Okay,
There it
there
goes.
is
Yep.
the actual link to the thing.
So you got to copy and paste that, but that's the link that goes to the rules on John's site.
Okay.
Hey, are we going to do single eliminations on this, or how are we going to do this?
I don't know. It depends on how many cars show up. Right now, we're just
Yeah.
trying to get the rules out, and then we'll kind of just wing it from there.
Yeah. I mean, if we got like if we get 10 people showing up, that would be like amazing. We'll go from there.
So 38 Racing says, so for the drive part, no exhaust plates or papers is okay. Just don't be stupid and don't pass Turbo Tom. Exactly. Just don't get hairy and crazy about it. It's already going to sound nasty and gnarly anyway, and it's going to be probably nastier or more gnarly than anything that's in the parking lot at Lambert's has ever been in there. And so I just thought it'd be kind of cool that if we had legit race cars show up at the Lambert's car show and everybody go inside and get some food and come back out and get in your race car and go back to the track.
Mm-hmm.
And since the sheriff's going to escort you, I think that would be pretty cool. Let's see. B&R Racing, 6-liter LS and Gen 3 Hemis Coyotes will dominate if they enter. Yeah, the Coyote's not allowed because it's not a push rod motor. Or did you already say something about that?
Yep, that's what I was saying.
Okay. The car show is on Thursday, yes. And then I'm not worried about the 6-liter LS. It's still got to wait. It's got to meet the weight to cubic inch. And to be honest with you, 6-liter LS is probably going to have a hard time keeping up with Cleveland. Now that Gen 3 Hemi is probably going to be tough. But I don't know. There's not too many Gen 3 Hemis that are 333 cubic inch. They do have the 368, so you could probably run a 5.7-liter one. How big is the 6-liter one?
It's 370. That's why I made the 368, so that way you couldn't run the 6.1.
Okay.
And the 6.0 wouldn't fit either. I think isn't a 6.0 like 367 something?
I think the GM 6-liter LS is 364 or 366 cubes.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Blue Grit Garage says bring some extra weight to add in case the scales are off a little bit. I bolted the ammo box in the trunk and add some weights as needed. Yeah, and that's the best way to do it. Or the other quick way is go get yourself a bag of kitty litter and put it wherever you want. Let's see. But generally, you want to see ballast needs to be bolted down and held in place.
Yeah. Also, too, we're going to have 3 different sets of scales out there, and mine are getting calibrated.
James from SSR Performance says, I can't make it on Thursday. That's too bad, buddy, but it's not going to hold you up from racing if you wanted to come. The cruise is not something that's mandatory or required. It's just a nice to have, and it's fun. And we don't know single or double eliminations. We don't have any idea of how many people are entered yet. Yes, 5.4 modular and 4.6 modular out. AMC 360 would be interesting. I agree. Yes. And that's what we actually had before these rules were finalized. We had a rule in here to really help the AMC guys because they were allowed to run an all-wheel drive car like the AMC Eagle or Concorde.
But it had to run hard tire.
Yeah, there was no reason to justify it was actually just a joke, but it got to be where everybody was thinking it was way too serious. So it's like, you know what, let's just get rid of it. It's too confusing. Let's see. Pontiac made 2 6-liter engines. Okay. But they made a Pontiac 350 and a 301. And I think they made some 326s. And they made all kinds of other stuff that you can make a combination engine out of. And that's the whole point of getting in the class. That's why we gave you a cubic inch spread from essentially like 300 cubic inch all the way up to 368. Let's see. And then Dust Devil Garage says there's going to be a van bracket too. I don't know if that is happening. Did John say that was happening?
I don't know. Well, he announced it on a Friday right before I brought out the rules. So he was John had it on there. So yeah.
Okay. Well, cool. All right. So Other than that, I guess we wound it down. There's only 10 minutes left of this live. If there's no more questions on the rules, we'll go ahead and hand those off to the side.
Yeah, I got Dan was saying that 1 liter equals 60.5 cubic inches. I got 1 liter equals, I'm just doing here some quick math real quick. I got 1 liter equals 61.0237. So a 6 liter will be fine because a 6 liter makes that 366.142, where the Gen 3 Hemi 6.1 makes it a 372.245. So you could run a 6 liter, but LS, but you can't run the Gen 3.
So being honest, like trying to figure out Oldsmobile combination. Look, if you want a good Oldsmobile combination, they got the 350 Oldsmobile that's the Ramrod 350.
Yeah.
But you can get a steel crank out of a 330 Oldsmobile and put it in that 350 because they all have the same stroke and they all have the main bearing size, same main bearing size. That's the one I would run. I'd put a 330 crank in the 350 Olds. I'd bore it 50 over, 60 over. If you're going to spend money on machine work, might as well bore it the biggest you can. And then have it that because it's going to be like 360 cubes and it's going to be pretty dang awesome. It would be a good running motor. But if you don't want to run a Pontiac, I would just I'd see what kind of small cubic inch stuff you could come up with Pontiac. Because I'm sure for Trans Am, didn't they come out? They had like a 304 cubic inch Pontiac, didn't they? Or 305? I'd build something like that. Okay. All right. So Miss Katji says it's a good start to the year, guys. Hey, so I'm glad you guys all came back after the holiday break that we took.
I actually got something real quick before we sign off here real quick. This is actually for you guys here that if you sign up for the No Name Nationals, we're kind of putting out this thing. It's can you see that right there?
Yeah.
Okay. So what this is that it's basically a business to business thing that I'm setting up for anybody who's already registered for the No Name Nationals, and you're going to be able to access all the parts of Edelbrock, Comp, Lunati, everything, and you're going to get better pricing. This is just a perk. This is not big corporate coming in. This is just a perk for it. So as soon as it's going to go live the 1st of February, and as you register, you're going to get a full year of access to that. And then John usually puts it out the last week or whatever of December. That way it'll give you a month to figure out what you're going to do in January. So if you register now, it's going to go live February 1st of 2025, and it'll be good until February 1st of 2026 for this year. And the pricing is substantial. I actually got a number and I forgot to bring it home. So I'll have to do that for John. I'll give John an example for Friday, but it's a pretty amazing thing. So that way it's a 24-hour a day access. So whatever part number you want, you can just log in. It's a website, and I grouped the whole No Name Nationals into one group. So that way you're getting a price break. And what's good about this is that for like people like SSR Performance, he's got a shop, right? And normally to do this, you have to do a substantial buy-in. Some of them are 50,000, 60,000 before you start getting this price level of breakpoint. So this is something that will it will definitely help you guys save cost on this thing. I mean, I can't even tell you how much it's going to save you because it's a lot. So yeah, and we'll have John has the pictures up. I think he's going to put it up on his site there, so that way you can look at it, and we'll keep things going on as it comes up. But it's going to be live February 1st of 2025. Open to anybody who's already registered. I think we've already got 20 something people registered, and they're kind of our guinea pigs right now.
Oh, I think that's pretty much what we got going on here. Let's see. Michael Robert Emery wants you to tell us about your brother's VW.
Yeah, It's actually pretty cool, man. It's a 2.1 liter, and we put a Holly carb on it, so it's a Holly actually 500 CFM, and it's pretty good. We got a broke in put in, and I'm going to go back out there as soon as he puts some miles on it to get the final tune on it. But he's going to start doing some, believe it or not, some dragon drives in that thing, dude.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so I'm stoked for him.
SSR Performance says I'm gonna do a 350 double hump and have some fun. I just need a carb and I see what kind of cams I got laying around. So this should be fun. I'm kind of interested to see what James is going to come up with, because the last thing they had, the Rusty Nova, was pretty dang hairy.
It's good. I like that car.
Yeah, me too. Especially when it was on the bottle and it wasn't spraying it out the trunk lid. The other thing was fast. Okay.
Blue Grit is asking, can we get the discount on all the cars? Yes. So basically, it's going to be to you. So the discount access is going to be to Blue Grit Garage with your name. And so, yeah, you can buy it for any car that you have. So this is a perk for you, not just for the no-name car, but basically for 1 full year on any person that you want to buy or sell it to, or your buddies or whatever want to buy it through you. That's fine. This is just a perk for you.
Tom Brown says, quick question, is the 340 intake wider than a 350? Yes, it's an inch wider. Professor P, Kim Fixes Things says, Professor P, is there an easy way to convert a Slant 6 to a 5-groove crank pulley?
I've only seen a 4 one. I don't know. Maybe. Right. I've got plenty of pulleys. Let me see. That's actually a good question, because you can put one in the back, one on the crank, and then let me see if I got one. And if you put a 1 groove here and then put the 2 groove in front of it, let me see if I can put those all together. It might work.
The Pontiac 347, BNR saying Pontiac 347 tri-power don't have that engine. We're not expecting you to have that engine or build that engine. All we're getting at is we're giving you a broad swath of area where you could build an engine. To me, it sounds like you don't need to be in this class. That's what I'm getting from this. And you don't have to justify it. It's like, you don't want to run? Okay. I appreciate that you considered trying to support it, but I mean, if you feel that you can't do it, don't do it, dude. I don't want you to hurt yourself. No, it's a big block. Okay. Let's see. 38 Racing is Shane. Does the Edelbrock Group offer a paper catalog?
Well, yeah, we actually have catalogs. We still, I'm not sure how to get them. Usually at PRI, we hand them out. And there's one for each category, but I'm pretty sure they do.
NSB says they need a scratch and dent 6.4 supercharger.
Sure, I'll just give you one of mine. Just kidding.
She's saying, Kim's saying that I meant for a 5-rib type belt, so like maybe a serpentine.
Oh, serpentine belt. Oh, no. Basically, you would just have to have that made.
Huh. All right. Well, that brings us up to pretty much 2 hours. So make sure you Friday you tune in for John Wilburn. He's going to have the most up-to-date news for the No Name Nationals and maybe the Triple Crown class. John does a good job, and thanks to all the support for this community. Because if you haven't noticed, it's like our community is pretty strong and very healthy. And we're kind of spread all over the country. And then once a year, we come together for our big old family reunion and have some burnouts, some throwdowns, some hot dogs, and some more burnouts. And so, make sure you're there. September coming up.
And so for Friday, I will get some comparative prices for John, so that way he can show you what list price is. You can look at Summit, and then you can see what this price will be. I'll make sure to get that for you. Second thing, James, for RHS is still a thing. We're still selling blocks. But we're just not listing them as of right now. But you can call up and still order our LS blocks from us.
Yeah, and 38 Racing brings up a point. BBQ.
Absolutely.
If you were there at the very first No Name Nationals, we did this thing called the Community Barbecue, the Community Cookout, and it was actually a really good time. The idea was you could pretty much walk from pit to pit and then get something off somebody's grill. And then you guys could share around, and that person was welcome to come over to your pit and get stuff off your grill.
I had something called meat candy that you had.
Yeah, that's when I used to have a wife too. So yeah, she made what was it? The Korean short ribs, and Ron Ward like literally ate 72 pounds of them. So he was the one that was making it, that was calling it meat candy.
Yeah.
My family's been in the meat business for like 70 years, and we don't have anything that tastes this good. So, all right. I guess that means we're out of here. So we will see you guys next week.
Yeah, and this is to a good start for a whole new year. So get on it, man. You guys have only got 200 and something days before the No Name Nationals. So get crack-a-lackin'.
Yeah, we're down like 250 something days. So we'll see you guys next week.
See you later.